started, first of all, I want to thank you all for being here tonight. We are excited that you are here to hear information about the bond for 2022. We wish we could get this turnout for study hall. Okay, so that's my joke. Okay, just getting the feel for the crowd to see if I can do jokes or not jokes tonight. But again, we are excited that you're here for this informational meeting. One of the things that I do want to open up and stress is that this is an informational meeting. This is an opportunity for us to give you information about this bond. Anything you want to know about, we want to be able to provide that to you, to be transparent, to be open, to be honest, to let you know that we're not covering anything up. We're putting everything out on the table. We're having 4 of these meetings. This is the first one of 4, and we invite you to attend all of them. We think that there will be different questions at different ones, and we want you to be a part of that if you choose to do so. My name is David Edison. I am superintendent at Aquilla ISD. I have been at Aquilla ISD for 16 years now. 5 years I was principal, and this is my 11th year as superintendent. And so today we're going to go over, again, just the information about the bond. You hopefully have picked up one of these. If you have not, we have some people in the back that can get you one. Then we've also hoped that you picked up a Post-it notepad and a pen because we know through the course of this presentation you will have questions, and we encourage you to write those questions down because we do want to have an opportunity to answer your questions. So please take a moment. If something is not clear, just jot it down so we can talk to you about it, and we'll answer questions there at the end. So please, we encourage those because, again, we want to be forthcoming with all of our information. Our agenda is like this. We're going to hopefully get y'all out of here by midnight. Second June. We're going to tell you how we got here. We're going to review some district goals. We're going to talk about our facilities currently. I'm going to give you a brief state of the district address, very brief. And then we're going to have some guest presentations, and then we're going to questions and wrap up. So how did we get here? How did we get to this point to a bond of 2022? So in the fall of 2021, the Aquilla ISD Facilities Committee was formed. The board, we had a meeting, and we decided that we were going to create a committee that would go and study our facilities and look at things that we need for potential projects based on growth, desired operational efficiency, safety, education, technology, and all these things. And then that committee would consider all of this information presented, provide input, and then give thoughts to the board as far as a recommendation. And on January 24th, the Facilities Committee did make a presentation to the board that outlined their recommendation based on their study from the fall and the winter. And in February, based on that recommendation of the Facilities Committee, our board passed a resolution to go out for a bond in May. And so that's kind of, in a nutshell, how we got here. Now you're probably asking, well, who was on that committee? And again, we want to be forthcoming and introduce these people. If you were on the committee, would you stand up, please? All right, so these are the people that you can cast stones at. Just kidding. Thank you guys. Have a seat. These are the people that were part of that committee that the district created to review the facilities and look at where we currently are. And you can see those names and those individuals. I would like to announce 2, just for a point that they will stand up later. But Taylor Dudick has been elected as the chair. Mike McKibben is a co-chair, and Tamara Urbanowski is another co-chair. And so we'll hear from them also here in a little bit. So one of the first things that we did was we reviewed the district's goals and mission and our vision and what we believe that we stand for at Aquilla. And these are them. And by the way, I'm not going to read through all these slides. These slides will be available on our bond website. But basically, the mission of Aquilla is to educate each individual student to their maximum potential and thus prepare them for success in pursuit of their life goals. And we kind of let that kind of drive our decision in making the recommendations for the board based on, again, our district goals. So each summer, our board gets together and they create our district goals for each year, and then revisit them and so forth every year. These are called SMART goals because they can be measured, and this is what the goals for this coming year were, so I wanted to share those with you. Future facilities planning, basically what we're doing right now. We have a long-range plan in place by June 2022. Parent and community involvement. This has been one of my favorites because I think that we've done a really good job this year of getting information out to our parents by way of just different things, calendars, Facebook, and different things. We'll do a survey about that to parents here toward the end of the year. Staff retention. It's not always easy to retain staff members. We would like to increase that number from 80 to 86% by the end of this year. And then extracurricular activities. This was a big one. This was one thing that the board stressed, that we would like 100% of our students to participate in one extracurricular activity by 2024. And what that means is even elementary kids. Because we found, and studies say, that when kids participate in things outside of academics, they are more successful in life. And that's one thing that we want to, the board took on this year, and we're excited about that. We actually did an elementary survey that will tell us some things that they're interested in hopes to meet that goal. So when the facilities committee first met, we got together in the library around a group, a big table, and I called them 25 of my closest friends. They were not, by the way, that's another joke. 25 of my closest friends, and we asked them, we said, what is something that you would like to see at Aquila? And we just asked them to dream. I'm a big Walt Disney fan. I could go on days for Walt Disney. But Walt Disney is kind of funny because this is my story, and I won't share much more about him, but he was fired from his first job because he lacked creativity. Let that sink in for a little bit. And that's Walt Disney. And so he took everything in a suitcase and he went off to make Walt Disney World. Kind of impressive story if you haven't read it. But I said, dream, imagine with me, what are some things that you would like to see? And this is the list that the committee came up with. We wrote everything down. We wanted to know everything that they wanted. So I'll just give you a kind of minute to look over that. From fine arts to ag barn to track and field to larger cafeteria to baseball, softball complex, storage, updated modern sports facility, extra classroom, secondary gym, extracurricular building. All these things, all the way down to a larger library. And so with all that, we kept that. And we wanted to go, after that meeting, we toured our facilities. And after our second and third meeting, we will also have that opportunity to tour our facilities. So if anybody wants to be a part of that, we encourage you to come to those meetings because they're at the school and we'll tour our facilities. But I wanted to go over this so that you guys understand where we are on our current facility. And one of the things that I would also like to point out is that if it has one asterisk, it was a bond package. If it has two asterisks, the district paid for it ourselves. That means the district paid for it out of our funds, whether that be fund balance or budget for it in our budget. In 2016, we added the early childhood wing, which if you have not seen the early childhood wing, it's an amazing facility for the things that go on in that building. I don't know if you guys know this, but we house the Early Childhood Development Center for Hill County schools, meaning that schools from Abbott, Olson, where's the stage? And other schools send their early childhood kids with special needs to our place, and we needed a place to house them. And the early childhood wing is where that's located. We also put an elementary classroom in there as well as PE. So that was built in 2016. 2012, we built the agriculture complex, which was part of our commitment to the bond. When we took the 2010 bond out, we said we were going to pay for part of it as a district, and that was the district's contribution. We built that ourselves using funds that we had within the district's fund balance, and I learned how to be a construction manager at risk, but we were able to take care of that. In 2011, the building expansion project, where we got our gym, library, field house, locker rooms, and that corridor that made everything into one building. Of course, that was a bond package. In 2003, you might remember Mr. Waldney was here. the classroom building project that did the main office at elementary and secondary classrooms, 1996 building, which was the multi-purpose is what we call it, and that has all the cafeteria, science lab, art room, current band hall. And then in 1965 was the old Act Shop, which we actually renovated. Again, the district paid for it, and it now houses the theater arts conference room, a power room, and football concession stand. And then one of our meetings is going to be held at the Alumni Center, which I invite you to see that also because we've been able to do some work in that. And then district vehicle fleet. This is one thing that a lot of schools go out for bonds. And what I mean by that is we at Aquila, we have never asked for the community's help with our fleet. You might notice a different school district is currently asking for help with their fleet through a bond package. Our board has taken the opportunity to create what's called a fleet plan that our fleet runs through, and our buses are replenished every 4 to 5 years, as well as our district vans and our ag trucks and so forth. So all of our fleet is less than 5 years old. And I say that because that's a district expenditure that the district takes on itself. And I also say that because I remember when I first got here, and I remember a situation, and it just occurred to me today, our buses were very old and they would break down on the side of the road. They were not safe. I remember Miss Cox, I saw her somewhere, but they went to a Mavericks game with student council, and I remember her calling panicked one night at like midnight because they were at the Mavericks game and the bus would not start to bring them home. And talk about a dangerous situation for your kids to be in Dallas and no one else to be in the parking lot. You're there in a school bus. And so I'm on the phone with Dallas police trying to get them some help. But you know, it's at that point that we realize that we need to make sure that the safety of our kids is our top priority across the board. And that's one thing that the board has been very generous in, is saying, yes, we do need this fleet. We do need to make sure we're putting safe vehicles out on the road. And that's one thing that I'm very excited about, because we have not asked our community for any financial support in that. So that's a big deal. Anybody know how much a new bus costs these days? $90,000.
86.
Last year. We just priced our new ones. They're going to be a 125. And buses are going up also. And if you know Greg Waddell, hopefully some of you do, amazing guy. He's our transportation director. He has been able to write 2 grants that have paid for 2 of our buses because of admissions. And these were buses that we didn't use, and so we were able to get new buses at half the cost. So anyway, there are amazing people in our district working for the betterment of our school, but I did want to just touch on that. Vision 22, so we came up with a bold step in our pursuit of a bigger and a brighter tomorrow after meeting with the facilities committee for all of these meetings. And I'm going to let Tamara Urbanowski come up, and she's going to kind of tell you the recommendation that was made to the board upon our completion of the facilities committee.
So if you can follow along on your flyer or the PowerPoint. So one of the main things that everybody wanted was a multi-purpose facility to host one-night play, to host graduation, to host the band hall, the fine arts, get a couple of additional classrooms in there. You can have graduations, banquets, all of those types of things would happen in this multi-purpose event center. That would normally happen in the gym, or if you happen to be at Christmas this year, or our holiday program, what did we call that?
Our Fine Arts Night.
Yeah. Okay. It was cramped, really cramped. Standing room only. If you wanted to see your kid at the stage, you had better got there an hour early. So this would give a place to do all of these other events that we're running out of space to do. In that, building that, we get the UIL regulation stays for our one-night play. Our one-night play has done extremely well over the years, even going all the way to state, and coming up just short of that. But if you would see where these guys practice, you would know that they don't have the type of stage that they would perform on at these events. They're moving props. They don't have the proper lighting. They don't even have a big enough stage that they would actually be performing on. In moving this also, we are getting, and let me look, going down into the facility improvements, moving this stage into its own building opens up our cafeteria. We are feeding kids from pre-K all the way through seniors in one little bitty cafeteria that if you were at Fine Arts Night, you saw. These guys are eating lunch at 10 o'clock in the morning, all the way to 1 o'clock in the afternoon, just to get everybody fed in one day. So we would be able to expand our cafeteria in moving this stage, and kind of give, maybe, I don't know about longer lunch times, but at least more ideal to lunch instead of brunch or breakfast. You're getting some extra storage in this multi-event center. Like I said, another couple of classrooms, a band hall, an art room, one-night play, and then all of the different things that the district hosts throughout the year. And the facility improvements, I talked a little bit about the cafeteria. We'll get to expand that. Currently, there is a little outdoor section that some of the high school kids get to go have lunch at, but the problem with that is you can't see them. And you're having somebody that's back and forth, watching these kids and supervising their lunch. You open up your cafeteria, they can still have that during pretty days, but then you have class where you can see them and still supervising. You're not running somebody back and forth whenever you may not have enough. Somebody, the coach is at a game or a teacher's at a UIL event or something that there's not always a lot of people. Covered recreational. I think this is going from the classrooms to what's going to be the elementary PE, which is the old ag building, which is currently housing theater. There's no conference room out there. That's the covered walkways I think we're talking about, because you're talking about little guys going out into the weather to get to PE. I don't think that we're talking about the whole district being but just that one area. You're getting additional parking spaces. All right. The enclosed childhood wing, right now it's open. You're exposed to the elements. So then you make it from one big continuous building. So that you're not losing a kid. I don't know if this has ever happened. But they're not out, they're not exposed, they're not in the elements, going from one building to the other. Because these kids, these little bitty kids, do go out of this building to lunch, to PE, to the nurse, whatever it is they're having to do. Then you have the athletic complex. So we're looking at building a new football field that would include a track around this field. Currently, these kids do not have a track to practice on. I live right here in town. I see kids running the streets. They don't have anywhere to practice. So we also have kids that have advanced to state in track, and they're practicing on the current football field or the parking lot or whatever, or having to be bused to another district to practice. So giving these kids this opportunity to have a track right here at home is what we're hoping to give them. With the athletics complex, obviously your new football fields, your new track, concession stand, restrooms, lighting, press box, that's all, bleachers is all included with that. So, it's kind of a little, I don't know if anyone has any questions.
And if you do have questions, definitely write them down, because we do want to answer those questions. But thank you very much. Also, so what we did was, once the committee had determined, these are the things that we're really interested in, what we did was we went back to that original list, the Imagineering list, and we said, if we do these things, we're able to mark off several different things. And so if you can see, the things in white are the things that this bond would take care of. The things in black are the things that the committee felt were not appropriate to do at this time. I will say that tennis became really close, simply because we thought that the courts were cheaper than they were, but they came in 3 times as much money as they were 2 years ago. The ag barn was a hot topic. It was a big discussion. And we'll talk about this a little bit more also, but the committee decision was to remove that after talking to our ag teacher. I came in the second meeting, kind of discussed that after reviewing that with other ag teachers in the area and the responsibility thereof. That was removed, but you can see the other things. The secondary gym, we are having, again, a dedicated PE building for that with a covered recreational area behind that area so that there would be basketball goals out there. And we also talked about an ag pavilion, but this would be a covered area that ag could use for validation or different things that they need to bring their animals in. This outdoor covered area could be used for that. So there's just multiple uses for that area also. And you can see what all is taken care of. Early technology, I'm a big fan of our P-TECH program. I could go on for days about that, just simply because this district has received an extreme amount of money to implement these programs to our kids, to allow them to be either receive an associate's degree or a certification before they leave Aquila ISD. All of that was funded by grant money that we applied for, that we got. We were one of the only 12 districts in Texas to receive the original designation. That's pretty big, y'all. There's 1,200 school districts in Texas. We were one of 12. And we're talking right under $1 million in total grant money to make these things work for our kids here in Aquila, Texas. Can you tell I'm a little passionate about the programs going on? I'm real passionate about that. I'll go to the State of the District address, and we're going to make this real short. That's another joke. Some of you might have heard this before, but again, I just want to go over it real quick with y'all just so you understand kind of where we're at. The other thing that I want to do, make sure that this meeting, we understand that we are here to answer any questions that you might have. So if I'm not touching on it today, we can ask it, or if there's something that you want to ask personally later, we can also answer that too. But first of all, we'll talk about school finance and our fund balance. Our fund balance is basically the school district savings account. And currently in our fund balance is a little over $1 million. We designated $800,000 of that to go to a building fund so that we are able to help pay for part of this bond. Last year's contribution was $578,000. What that means is last year in our budget, we came in under budget by $578,000. So we were able to take that and shift that into fund balance. And then our INS fund balance, which is our interest and sinking fund balance, that's how we pay for bonds. We have $233,000 in there. So when we say that we're being good stewards of your money, I really feel like this helps you understand why we can say a comment such as that. Right now, total, if you add all our fund balance up, we have $2,616,000. For a district this size, that is phenomenal. Just to give you a little idea of our historic fund balance accounts, what we've been able to put back in fund balance from year to year. Here is just some totals for you to just give you an idea. And just to make this as simple as I can, this is after the year is over, we paid all of our bills, all of our staff and everything like that. This is the money that we have been able to save to put back. We're not wasting money. And that's another thing I just want you to understand. Any opportunity that we have to save, this district is doing that. And I'm real thankful for that. The other thing that I want to mention is our tax rate history. This is one of my favorite charts that I'm going to show you tonight. In 2010, we were at $1.24 total tax rate. You guys entrusted us with 12 more cents and you said, hey, we're going to pass that 2010 bond. And you gave us 12 more cents and we bought us to $1.36, and we thank you for it. We built all the things that we said we were going to do with it, and then some. And so you went up to $1.36. 10 years later, come down here, the district has been able to lower your tax rate to $1.24. All right? So we were able to give all those pennies back to you. I want you to understand that I know your property taxes have done this because your evaluations on your homes have went up. okay? We could have continued to do that. We could have continued to say we were going to leave it at $1.36 because that's what you had told us in the 2010 bond. We could charge you $1.36. This district and this board took it upon ourselves to say, hey, if we can lower these taxes, let's do it. Let's take some of that burden off. And in 10 years, guys, we were able to come all the way back down to $1.24. Probably, again, my favorite chart that I'm going to show you tonight. That's pretty incredible for a school district this size. Enrollment and transfers, whew, real hot topic. You want to get some passion, here is where we're going to get it. Enrollment and transfers. Dr. Edison has taken down the billboard on 35. Okay, so we are following on. Yeah, so we never had a billboard on 35 that said, send us your kids, I promise. And so here are our total enrollment numbers, historical. Again, we're just going back for 10 years just to give you guys an idea of what they were. In 2010, we had 244 kids. Today, we have 333. Transfers, because again, just a hot topic. In 2010, 2011, we had 85 total transfers. Today, we have 88 total transfers. So you might hear comments that say something about our enrollments increasing because of transfers. This chart hopefully can allow you to understand that is not the case.
Dr. Edison, something you may need to include in that transfer is that includes employees' kids as well.
Thank you.
And our early childhood children that we bring here from other districts.
Thank you.
That's not just your pre-K through 12 transfers. It could include some teachers' kids as well, which I think the number was 30, don't quote me on this, 35?
35.
35.
And Ms. Page is here somewhere.
She's slacking on us.
Okay, she's here somewhere. But there was a comment made about that we're giving you guys bogus numbers. These are not correct numbers. These are numbers that we make up in our head. These are actual numbers. These are very accurate. We got data to back it up. Ms. Page has taken it upon herself that she has these kids listed by name so that we're able to identify who these kids are, what grade they're in, when they're going to age out, and so forth, so that we have a grasp of transfer kids at Aquila. Again, I know that's a hot topic, but it's one that we wanted to address, and so we have several people that are looking at those numbers so that they're actual accurate numbers, and we're not just sending you some information that is inaccurate. This is a nice chart that I just wanted to show you guys that talks about our enrollment and our tax rate. It's kind of all that information that I just included. And it talks about over the course of 10 years how our tax rate has been able to come back down as enrollment has also gone up. So just be mindful of that. We have a couple of special guests with us tonight, and we'll go ahead and turn it over to them and just kind of explain to you a little bit about what they do. Jake Lawrence is with Government Capital. Government Capital is a bond counsel that helps the districts sell the bonds once the district's bond passes. I would like to also mention this, that Jake makes no money off of us. If this bond does not pass, it's not successful, it's all, he's here to help us give you correct information about this bond. And so I'll turn it over to Jake. I would also like to say Government Capital is the same firm that we used in 2010 with that bond, so we have built a relationship with these guys. And so I'll turn it over to you, Jake.
Thank you, Dr. Edison. Jake Lawrence with Government Capital. Briefly about us is we work as financial advisors for a lot of municipalities across the state of Texas. Predominantly, mostly in rural schools. We find ourselves more affiliated with them and trying to help them attain their goals they're looking forward to. I feel like me being from a small town myself provided me an opportunity to understand what makes small towns unique, but also some of the more difficult problems that they may have too, and try how to overcome them. So what we're going to get into a little bit about Aquila is the history of how schools are funded. I think it's very important to take that into consideration when you're talking about bond elections. bonds are not always easy. They're always public interest on what is, going into these types of situations. And I feel like school and public funding for schools are very much integral to that process. So as I go through this, feel free to ask any questions at any point in time. It's not going to bother me at all. So what school districts have available to them are two different tax rates. They have their M&O and INS tax rates. The M&O, it stands for maintenance and operation, and the INS stands for interest and sinkings. Pretty much how I break it down is M&O is budget tax rate and INS is bond tax rate. So what this M&O tax rate is used for, it is a standard amount that is dictated by the school district for what is going to be used, those revenues that are brought in to pay for the bills. It pays for all the salaries, it pays for all the curriculum, it pays for all the gas in the buses, uniforms, everything that y'all pay for to run the school district monthly, year in, year out is going to be coming out of your M&O taxes. And that is just, it's going to be funded. It's in the state constitution that you will fund school districts through that tax rate. It's standard across every district, and it allows them to be able to perform and meet the standard that they're expected to be made from TEA. M&O taxes are subject to the state funding formula and the redistribution of school wealth. And what that means is that some districts across the state of Texas actually have to, the local taxes that they collect for their budget has to be sent in excess to Austin to be given to other school districts that are not as property wealthy. Aquila is actually one of those districts that are unique, that they actually receive additional funding from the state. So you're not only funding it just within the citizens and the community of Aquila. The state of Texas provides additional funding above and beyond what y'all would normally bring in too. So y'all are receiving some of that redistribution of wealth from the oil and gas districts, the very wealthy metropolitan areas, those excess of taxes that they bring in. Some of it gets sent to y'all to help run the school district as well out of your budget. As for INS taxes, those are strictly can only be used for when an INS tax is levied upon a property valuation. Those revenues that are brought in can only be used for the payment of principal and interest on bonds. So bond elections must have been approved and passed by the voters, and then an INS tax rate can be set to be able to make those payments. You cannot take those funds and commingle them into your budget in any way, shape, or form. They are set aside strictly just for those two, for that payment that you make every year for your bonds. Let's see, they can be used for anything for construction of new facilities, rehabilitation of old, purchase of new equipment needed for district programs. Just pretty much what bonds are used for. The INS taxes are not subject to the state funding formula. So that means that any INS tax levied within the district stays within the district no matter what too. You're not going to, if y'all ever flip and don't receive money from the state, it does not matter from your bond tax rate because it'll stay within the district completely. So yeah, I wanted to give you a quick breakdown of what the two tax rates are. What I'm going to say is bond tax rate and budget tax rate between those two. Any questions on these two tax rates? Okay. How did we get here? So bonds were not prevalent amongst school districts pretty much prior to 2005. That is because school districts had the ability to set an INS tax rate of $1.50 to be able to run their school and pretty much pay for anything they could possibly want to. Most school districts operate in a lower area than $1.50 now because the state and legislature came in and stated, y'all are pocketing too much money from a $1.50 tax rate. We're going to compress you down and you're only going to get $1.04. And you have 2 years to be able to set a budget that pretty much loses a third of what it once was. So as you can see here, the Aquila ISD's M&O rate dropped from $1.50 to $1.17 because of the TRE that y'all passed. But what that is stating is most school districts, if you were operating at maybe you needed $1.30 to run your school district, but you would take that additional 20 cents to get to $1.50 and you would set it aside. And you would continually set that aside year over year. And once that 20 cents continually built up year over year, you would take those funds and build some sort of facility or renovate an older one. So that was kind of the way of going as the pay-as-you-go model. That's no longer available for school districts at all because what the legislature was saying back in 2005, 2006 is that if you're ever going to raise your tax rate to be able to do things, you need to go to the voters and have them have a say. So that's why bond elections and kind of my job in general has become a little bit more active for sure. since that time frame. So yeah, it was just a compression. Let's say if I missed anything, it was passed enacting equalization of school wealth. It compresses you down on your M&O side, the budget tax rate, and it just made budgets where you're only going to be paying for your monthly bills and your salaries and your curriculum. So that's what the taxes are now used for out of your budget tax rate. It can reduce you down to $1.17, so that kind of left you with, okay, that's what we're going to need to be able to run our school district. And that's what Aquila has been using until, guess what else happened? Tax rate compression part 2. We're compressed again back in 2018, where the state funding share percentage right here, I don't know if, I'm sorry, if there's a laser on here or not, but this little graph right here is that over time, the state was not funding school districts the same as they had always been back when the first compression happened. And what that means is that it's more going on to the local tax base to be able to fund the school. Thank goodness for the legislature. They came in and said, all right, we're going to make it back to closer to even 50-50% from state and from local to be able to fund these schools. And they passed the tax compression part 2. And what that did for Aquila is it pretty much compressed you all the way down to what you are today at 96 cents. So once again, you're getting compressed, even more so. So it's less revenue coming into the district to be able to run the school, but a little bit more coming in from the state. That still doesn't really address the facilities part of this, which is why we're talking about bonds today. But the new money had to be used pretty much for salaries. It gave teachers upgrades in terms of their payroll. And you can see there that who it had to go to and what was required by the legislature to do so. But any questions really about the tax rate compressions of why you see your tax rate going down, but none of that is addressing facilities because your budget is not used for facilities any longer. It's used to fix, put a band-aid on things or small projects that you may be able to find some funds for. But for larger scale projects, you are no longer able to use your budget tax rate to address those needs and concerns. Briefly, here is a breakdown of the currently outstanding bonds that Aquila has from previous bond elections. The top part is the ones that were passed by voter approved. You have your Series 2011 QSCB and a Series 2011 B bond. The one on the right, which is about to be paid off, was from, I think, 2001 bond election that y'all had, and is currently being almost completely paid off from that bond election there. What the school district did back in 2010 when that election was run was they took advantage of a program that was provided from the federal government and the state. Because we were just coming out of a recession, it allowed the school district to go out for bonds to spur the economy and build and do those types of things, but at a pretty much essentially a 0% interest rate. You'd only have to pay the principal back on what you borrowed. And it was a very unique type of bond, but they only were within a window of opportunity of a few years. It was no longer allowed. But I just want to make notice that Aquila did take advantage of that, so like a lot of other school districts, but for what y'all did for this 2011 QSCB and as well as the one on the bottom, the 2011 QZAB, those are both types of bonds that you do not owe interest on. So we have maintained to be able to build these types of facilities over the last couple of years without having any interest expense. So it's the same way if you went and bought a house and put it on a mortgage, but instead of having to pay any interest back on that, you're just paying for what the house is actually worth. So that's what the school district did during that time period, and now it kind of allowed us to get to this point in time to be able to call another bond election too. Let's see. The 2011 bond, which we're going to be talking about as well, is because the school district has enough funds to be able to pay that off here pretty quickly. And we're going to do that to be able to lower the tax burden to the community if this bond were to pass as well. Because the excess funds that have come in from the state and from a little bit from the local tax base, that buildup has allowed the opportunity to defease these bonds quicker than what would normally be assessed. We would not have to wait all the way out until the end of 2023 to pay it off. We could actually pay it off now if we choose to do so. Because we're trying to work around these different types of annual debt service amounts to be able to fit this new bond into that same process and how it affects your tax rate as well. So that is something the board is considering and we'll plan to move forward with in the future as well. Area tax rates. So I think this is important to kind of give a little bit of perspective of what some school districts around y'all have been charging and when their last bond elections were, what their average, that ADA column right there is the average daily attendance and then the wealth per student of that. And I'll go by each one. The top three, Aquila, Abbott, and Itasca, they are going out for bond elections right now. That little asterisk is what is going to be the tax rate from our estimation should all three of those bonds pass as well. The taxable value, that's very important to take into consideration because that is what is be able to that's how your tax rate is set, is based upon those amounts there. And you can't always compare yourself apples to other districts because some districts have maybe more industry or potentially a solar farm or a wind farm or oil and gas. They have those types of investment or in that district itself to be able to build up the tax base. What that means is if you look on the far right, the wealth per student number there, if you are below $391,000 per student, then it means you're eligible for extra state funding on your bonds. So the only ones that are eligible are Hubbard, yourself, and that's it. So those two school districts receive additional funding as it relates to their bond payment each and every year. That means the other school districts, they do not receive any additional support. It comes strictly from the citizens, and it is a huge benefit for Aquila to be able to have that additional support coming from the state as well. Also, what's important, I think, just to give some relevancy, is how often when the school district has last passed a bond as well. So you can see those years that correspond, just to see, for the most part, most schools go anywhere from 10 to 15 years before they have to reassess and take care of their existing facilities and maybe do some renovation projects or new projects as well. That's usually what you see historically from school districts. Unless you're living in the Metroplex where you have to, or in the big cities and you're having to pass bonds to build brand new facilities because of population growth. Outside of those scenarios, most school districts fall within that category. You only do a bond every so often just to be able to keep up and maintain the level of facility that you use to house kids and educate kids too. So a lot of them have done some in the recent time, and you can see that Itasca and Abbott are going out with y'all again for this May election cycle. Just kind of quickly, you can kind of see, if you use, for example, let's use the top and the bottom. So let's look at Aquila and Hillsborough. It's essentially stating that for every tax penny levied between Aquila and Hillsborough, is that Hillsborough gets 9 times the amount of revenue for every 1 tax penny. So they're able to generate what that would mean 9 times the project for the same amount of tax pennies, or it costs you 9 times more to do the same project as they would do. So that's kind of just showing the distinction between those, is that some school districts, like a larger city, is going to have more accessibility to be able to go out for larger bonds. When you're talking about 50 million, 60 million or stuff like that, which Hillsborough I think recently did. So yeah, just a comparative example of how that works in these school districts around you. I don't think there's anything after this one, but I'm happy to answer and stay afterwards to answer questions that y'all have, or if you have any right now, to kind of go over school finance and what we're looking at here today.
Also, thank you, Jake. This is in your chart also, so that people ask you why it says that 23% of our bond is being paid for by the state. Now you can actually show them why that's the case on this chart also. So thank you very much, Jake. Next we have Wade Zimmer coming up from SDH Architecture. While he's coming up, I just want to say this also, that when we built the 2010 bond, or when we built the 2010 building, we interviewed architects, and one of the things that we were very particular about is having our kids safe in one area, in one roof. And this is one thing why we selected Wade and his firm, was they were the only architecture firm that said, yes, we can do it. We can make your school look exactly how you want it to look. And so we went right back to them and told them we want to do a little bit more, and so that's how we got with Wade. So we worked with both of these individuals 10 years ago. So Wade, I think
Thank you, Dr. Edson. Again, Wade Zimmer, Singleton Zimmer, Halliburton Architecture. We're out of Bryan College Station. We primarily, about 75% of our work is rural and community schools, where the district has at most one high school, but generally has one entire campus, K through 12. So that's kind of the bread and butter for the districts and work that we do. So we have a good understanding. Like Dr. Edison said, in 2010, 11, we did your new gym and library area with the locker rooms behind and help with that facility. And then following that, in the last 10 years, the board has contacted us on multiple occasions, pro bono, to help them update the conceptual master plan. TEA, State of Texas, mandates that you have a master plan, particularly before you do a bond, but they really want you to keep your master plan going and update it every couple of years. So we have done that, and it has changed and evolved and been lots of different things, different places. Some major considerations that have gone on, particularly were the need to, for lack of a better term, not paint yourself in a corner. The location of the football field and bleachers right now are basically blocking any potential expansion you could do to have a contiguous academic facility. So the 4 classroom extension that you see here, to which side this laser was working or not.
thank y'all for coming.
So this 4 classroom extension here was one of the first things that was brought up. So, before we do anything else, let's make sure we have the number of classrooms we need, the size of classrooms we need, both for the students now and for future growth if it was to happen. The nice thing about having extra classrooms is you can reduce class sizes if you can get the teachers and personnel in there. And we always advocate building a new classroom before you need it, because the other alternative is spending money on a portable, and there's nothing more permanent than a temporary solution. You guys have seen portables at lots of districts that are there for 15, 20 years, and we really hate to see that. So before it's a need, we always say go in there and get some extra classrooms. So in order to put those classrooms there, we would need to address the football field and neighboring things. We understand, obviously, you have a need for a track, other extracurricular facilities. So what do? We pushed it as far away from the rest of the academic stuff as we could, so that in the future, if anything else happens, you've got all this area here that maybe you could do something else. I'm not talking about that today, but we want you to know that we're forward thinking for things like that, opportunities in the future. Potentially have some access out the back. I realize you can get a lot of congestion. I know you have a pickup area here, you have this area in the front, but to have a dead end here, it can be a little more fluid for games, track meets, events, graduations, other things, to be able to have 2 points of entrance and egress. So doing something in the back. Obviously, there's a lot of things we have to work around. When we did the gym project in 2010, the wastewater treatment facility wasn't sufficient, so that was expanded greatly. We think now it's large enough to handle all of the new facilities we're proposing, so no new work there. But you can see septic field, we're kind of leaving that area untouched. Once something like this happens, and I do want to stress, it's not on this, but you see it real big on my board over here, preliminary. All these things that we've done for the last 10 years have been pro bono services. After you pass a bond, we'll do the actual design, working with the facilities committee, working with the board. Community members, anybody who wants to come, we will listen. That's what we do. This is our best guess based on the board's previous adoptions of conceptual master plan. But will things change? Just a little bit. I don't think it'll be a complete revamp of this, but we can tweak and adjust as we need to within the parameters of the bond you're calling. So again, the idea was push this athletic facility back and far away so that it can be expanded in the future if need be. But for the time being, we could, this is your existing parking lot here in black, so we could extend that to the back. then you would have access there. You could park and go to this stadium. You could park and go into the gym, into the rest of the school. You can go to ag, kind of centrally located for parking, for everything. Your existing ag building here, we think that a good use for that would be to renovate it so we can have PE in there for elementary, for little kids. Yes, it's not big enough to have a competition high school basketball game in there, but for jumping rope and doing all the other things kids need to do, I think that it's pretty appropriate for that. We would do behind that covered outdoor area where we could do basketball and other things. Moving up toward the front, well, let's go here, the multi-purpose event center. So this building is approximately 13,000 square feet, 12.6 I think. A UIL stage in there that has the width and the depth to accommodate props and prop storage, all of the things that they need to do for UIL academic competition. Keep in mind that is extracurricular activities, but it's also instructional classroom space. You can do speech in there, public speaking, extemp speaking, and FFA, and 4-H do a lot of that. Schools can teach that too. And someday, maybe your child's an architect and they have to stand in front of a school or a church with a bunch of people, and you don't want that to be the first time they've ever done it. So lots of things that can happen in that facility. New band hall, new art classrooms. By doing band hall and art classroom in there, by having that facility available, by moving a lot of things that are stored in other areas, particularly upstairs, above the old ag, and in your cafeteria space, by moving all those things out, you free up areas within the existing school for other purposes. So we've cut it off this slide merely to make everything bigger for you. So this area on the cafeteria, right now you have I wouldn't call it a stage, you have a very small platform there. Does not meet any requirements for UIL whatsoever. And we think we could just take that platform out, take the office out next to it, and we can gain about 40% additional dining space in your cafeteria. So then you can either spread the kids out more, or more likely, put more kids in there and take your lunch periods and not have to eat so early or so late in the day. And then also we would take out what I'll call the west wall. I think it's actually the north wall if you're going that way, north to the left. So take out the north wall of that towards the gym, open that up with glass, put doors in there, and then you can have an extension. So you have outdoor dining as well. That's visible, teachers can see it. You don't have to have somebody come out and around there or something like that. So a big open, half of that inside, half of that outside for extended dining area. And then you can see this little spot here is the enclosed early childhood connector. Again, we do as much as we can with the bond money we have, and then we stop. And so that was 10 years ago we did this, and then following up on that, the ag, then the EC. And so to be able to connect that and then close it, I think would be a benefit for particularly the younger kids. It can be a hassle to get everyone to put your coat and gloves on to go the distance across. Not unlike what we did here. If you recall, we added this corridor from the secondary across cafeteria to the gym, all enclosed, all air conditioned. I feel like it's quite nice, give a new face to the school, improve security, and improve your comfort levels, hopefully, as you move around the district. Field house, we went back and forth, talked about a lot of options for the field house. The short answer is, it's pretty difficult to ask a team to run from here all the way over to here to dress out or do something during halftime. So we felt like it was pretty appropriate. Also, just due to, I won't say growth, but due to the participation levels in athletics that you have, and also male and female use, the locker room that we did just 10 years ago would be good to have additional weights, additional other facilities, so we can use the field house both for halftime. You can use it for indoor practice days, inclement weather, if track and things are going on. You can use it to dress out for those teams. You can have weights equipment out there, and also potentially free up some space in your existing locker room there. So kind of multi-purpose field house type area. Concessions, restrooms, and tickets. Again, this is just conceptual, but these 5 blocks, if you look at it that way, 3 orange and 2 gray. The orange ones would be like restroom on men's on one side, women's on the other side, concessions in the middle with tickets, And then the 2 gray blocks could be like covered gate areas where you could walk in and pass into the stadium. So that's,
Thank you, Wade.
yes, sir.
All right, we're almost done, but we do again want to ask for an opportunity for the questions and the wrap up. Before we do that, again, we gave you guys this little post-it. We do encourage you to write your questions down, and we can take those up from you. We understand you might not want to ask a question, but you feel more comfortable writing it down. Please feel free to utilize that so we can take those from you and we will answer those. While you're doing that, I do want to say this. This is an informational meeting. I know that we get passionate about some of the things that we say only because we do this every single day. We're in the confines of those 4 walls. We see the impact that it has on kids, and it's basically just what we do every day. What I do want to tell you is that we live in America. We all have a right to get out and vote and cast our own thoughts. That's one of the great things about living in this country, about living in this nation. We're not here to convince you, vote for this bond, do it, do it, do it. We're here to help you make an educated decision so that you can get out and exercise your right to vote. We have voter registration cards if you are not registered to vote. We have the voter registration list if you want to check and make sure you're on the list. We have all of that stuff because we want you to vote. And that's the point of having an informational meeting is for that. The individuals answering questions for us will be myself. Jake Lawrence will answer bond questions. Wade Zimmer will answer questions about the design. And then we're going to have Taylor Dudick come up and answer some facilities questions that I might not can answer. Superintendent in a bond election is very tied from the moment that the board goes forward with the election. Superintendent cannot promote the election, so I can't get up here and say go vote yes. I can only provide you with information, so I don't want that to be misconstrued by me talking about different things. So I've asked Taylor to come up and help us in the event that you have a question on facilities. Mr. Christian's going to be reading our questions off to us if you have them, and then again we'll see if you have any more questions before we dismiss. So, Mr. Christian.
Just a few so far. First question we have here is, will this bond receive state or federal assistance?
So in regards to the funding, you still are eligible for existing debt allotment funding from the state. That's automatically provided to the district for every bond that is passed at Aquila at this time. It's based upon a funding formula, and the 2 main components of that formula are always going to be what is your value versus your student enrollment or average daily attendance. So what I was talking about previously, y'all fall within underneath that threshold of 391,000. So as long as you're below that, you receive state funding because it's an equalization level. There's also additional funding out there. I can't guarantee you get it though. It would be called instructional facilities allotment. If this bond passes, we will apply for that instructional facilities allotment funding, but it's up to the legislature whenever they decide. There's no regiment, but every now and after a couple sessions, they'll meet and they'll approve new IFA funding. And so that is another avenue that is potentially out there as well, outside of the existing debt allotment that's automatic. I don't know if IFA is going to happen or not, but we're going to apply for it, and if the legislature approves it, then you will receive that funding as well.
So to piggyback on that, the funding that we have left over, the school board has the $587,000. Is that going to be a product of when you apply for that? That's something that they take into account?
No, sir, they're not going to take that into account. We're going to use those funds to pay off those old bonds, what they're meant to be done for.
Okay.
Because like I said, the INS reserve can only be used to pay off bonds, just nothing else.
But Trent, were you talking about the 500 we had left from this
Yes.
past year? Okay, so that money, the board will have an opportunity to designate that to building a project. And so, yes, so we will go back to the board and say the board has 800,000 right now in designated building funds. We could go back to the board and they could give us another 500. which once all these costs come in, we do anticipate going back to the board and asking for the district to give a little bit more money to help offset the cost of this bond.
I got a question about that extra money. When you don't, when you're, whether it's household or business or anything, at the end of the year, you have money. Say you're running cows, you've got extra money at the end of the year. Why is that money, or can that money be used to pay that old bond off sooner? Why was that not an option before?
Very, very good question. So that money is maintenance and operation money, which is the M&O money, which would not allow us to transfer it to a bond. So a bond can only be paid with INS money, which is taxpayer dollars. So good question.
You mentioned that the 2011 bond was no interest. Why would you pay that off early then? And how does that compare with what you anticipate the interest of these bonds?
So, good question. There's two bonds that had no interest. The 2011B was from the year 2001, roughly. That one was not eligible. There was no program available for that time. Why it's called 2011B is because Aquila passed that bond in 2001, then refinanced it for a lower interest rate in 2011. So it changed from 2001 to 2011. But because it's a refinancing and not new money, it was not eligible for the interest-free. If you go back to that slide, the interest rate's up there. It's tiny, I know, it's hard to see. That bond is the one we're talking about paying off right here. The interest rate currently is 4.22% on it. So the other bonds on the left side are essentially zero interest. So we're not touching those right now.
All right, Mr. Christian.
All right, another bond question is, how do you purchase bonds?
So if your local community wanted to purchase that bond, if that's what I'm thinking that question is referring to, when you go out and have a bond sale, it's roughly 75 to 90 days after the bond election. There's a lot of work on our end and underwriters council and attorney general's office. Real fun stuff, let me tell you. That all has to happen before you have a bond sale. But what y'all have an opportunity to do is that if you as an individual would like to purchase Aquila ISD bonds, because you live inside the district, you have first priority. And what that means is there are certain maturities within a serial bond election like this that are more attractive to investors than others. You may not want one of the back end maturities that'll pay higher interest, but you may not want to wait that long till you get completely paid off. You may see a certain year that you want to have a payoff on, and like that, because you live in the district, you get first priority and can purchase those yourself before any institutional investor purchases them. So no mutual fund or retirement account of a state will supersede yourself. You will have that ability to purchase the bonds before any other individual or entity.
Okay, and we do have a couple more questions on bonds, and I'll go ahead and ask these together. But one of them is, how many years will we pay on the proposed bond? And then there was a question on the amount remaining on the 2001 and 2011 bonds, which might be on the slide there.
Yeah. The totals remaining through this year, sorry, go back, it's that one. There's 588,000 on one. Well, we've already made a payment in February, so it'll be a little bit less. But at January of this year, this is what it was. We've already made a payment on these, so it'll be less than these numbers. But 588,000 left on the 2011 QSCB, $682,000 left on the QZAB, and then 180,000 left on the 2001 bond. Currently, what the school board is looking at is having this bond go out for 25 years. That is what allows the tax rate to be set in this manner, and what we decided to move forward with. Anything else you want to add to either of those?
Questions, a couple of questions on the football field. hot topic. Will it be 80 or 100 yard football? And then,
Sure. Yeah.
It will be 6-man. It will be a 6-man field, but the only way to build it, it will be able to actually fit an 11-man if that is ever necessary, if growth continues and we need that. But, so it has to be built that way to fit the field in. But we're 6-man and we're still 6-man.
400
The
meter
track size
track
doesn't
is
change.
400 meters all the way around. It doesn't
So-
get any bigger or smaller if you pay
So we have the
6-man
size,
or
but
11-man
we're not
football.
gonna use it. I'm just telling you. 6-man.
and then kind of a follow-up concern for clarification is looking at future growth. Do we have an idea of how long it will take before we potentially have to look at moving up from 6-man football? And would we have to redo our turf field at that point?
Real good questions. So I'll take the enrollment part of it. As far as enrollment goes currently, 6-man is 104.5 in high school. That number has been increased over the years. We anticipate that number will continue to be increased. There are state legislatures that realize what rural schools do for rural communities and how they're still growing. So they have asked that that number be raised to potentially 107. There's even been some numbers thrown out to 109. So we will continue to play with that number as the years go by. We have to report every 2 years. It does give us some flexibility in turning in a number in the way that we can look at 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th grades, or we can look at 9, 10, 11, 12th grade. At one point they gave us an option of 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So there's different ways that we can play with these numbers in order to maintain the 6-man status for as long as we are able to. Just to give you an idea of how important this is, our junior class right now has 31 kids in it. That's a lot of kids, but the next class has 21. So you're talking about a 10-kid difference right there in the mix of 2 grades. So enrollment is definitely something that we continue to watch, but it is something that I believe is not something we have to worry about right now in the mix of the whole 6-man status. But don't quote me to say it's not coming, because eventually, unless the state legislatures move that number up continually, that's something that we will need to discuss. I'll let Coach Williams talk briefly just about the turf and how the turf works on moving it to 11-man. Will we be able to use the same turf? I think was the question, right?
Right. I've been a part of a couple athletic facilities that were turf. There were 6-man facilities. They were a 40-yard field, or a half, so it's 80. Our football field right now is end zone to end zone is 80, but end of the goal line to the end of the end goal line is going to be 120. So, 100, I'm sorry. So what they would do, those goalposts are bolted into the bottom. All you got to do is pop those goalposts out. You have to widen the field with the roll of carpet, because that's what turf is, okay? And extend the middle from a 40 to a 50. So you're extending it 10 and 10. Pretty much, it's pretty simple. I was a part of it, of a new facility in Rankin, and it's the same conversation, because they were growing at the time. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? After listening to the construction company that came in and put the bid in on the field, it's a pretty simple process. Erie County did the same thing. I'm guessing I can say schools, but Erie County did the same thing, and they actually built an 11-man football field, because at that time they had to count kids from a boys ranch. 2 years later, the state came in, or UIL came in, and they took that number away, where they did not have to count those numbers anymore, and it dropped them all the way down to about 75 in high school. So they're a mid-range Division I 6-man school. So, and they'll never go back up, because they're not going to ever have to count those kids. So I'm not going to say never, but they just built a brand new, big, huge stadium And then in 2 years, their numbers went way down. So it's not a big problem.
Is it cost efficient to go with turf compared to grass?
Okay, just me, and then you, from what I've been
He's
told
gonna
and
get a
what
little
I've
passionate
seen,
about this.
what I've been told and what I've seen, okay, because I've seen a few of them get put in. I was at a 6-man school right outside of Brownwood. When I got there was already turf there, okay? It was there for 9 years. There was some discussion about what are we gonna do, what are we gonna do. They set aside the money to redo the field, 10 years to put in new carpet. And they had a big town meeting because a lot of people wanted to go back to grass. After listening to because they have to tear all the drainage system out. Okay, you gotta put drainage in no matter what. So no matter what, if you put the track in, you gotta do the dirt work, no matter if you go grass or carpet. You gotta put the drainage system in, no matter if you go grass or carpet. I know right now we are spending a ton of money. Our football field's beautiful. I will say that. I love our football field. We're spending a lot of money on it. Okay, you don't just have a field like that without spending some cash on it.
The other thing I would say, and I don't mean to cut you off, Coach, too, is that the website at the bottom, we encourage you to visit because we're going to update it constantly. What we're pulling right now, Rusty, is what we paid over the last 5 years on our grass football field as compared to what the turf life expectancy will be. So we hope to have a graph up for you guys that will compare the two, but you would be amazed at just looking over the 5-year data that we've collected, what we're paying currently on our field maintenance, and the fact water, also watering that thing in the Texas heat. And then we also have a Texas multi-kiln that comes in and does the fertilization and the treatment for that so that the field does look so nice. Those things cost some money, and we have shed out quite a bit over the last several years for that, but we do hope to have that graph.
Yeah, I still haven't billed you for helping lay that grass.
Nice.
And I'll say one more quick thing. There's another small school in between here in Brownwood, and that's a school that does not even play football. They're a cross country, a basketball, and a track school. That's it. Well, up until last year, they've never had a track. And I'm talking about Pretty, Texas, so right south of Comanche. They passed a bond to build a track. Well, in order to build a track, you got to put something in the middle of the track. So they put a brand new. They don't even have football, and they never will have football at Pretty. They built a brand new 6-man turf football field right in the middle of it. It's the Pretty Pirates, and they don't even play football.
This was a question about the use of the term defease, just like I was using earlier, just kind of wanted clarification on what that
Yeah, sorry about that. Defease, it's just to pay off early. It's a bond term. I probably should have said that what they're using is when I say they're defeasing bonds, they're paying it off sooner than what the actual maturity of that note is. So, sorry about that.
And then on the track, will it be available for community use, and how would that access work?
Tamara, you want to take this? Tamara spills it first. Yes, it will be available for community use. It does come with responsibilities of the community, and that's something that we sat down with Coach Williams and we had talked about. And so, there will be, you'll be able to have access, but you won't be able to ride bicycles on it. Just different things to maintain the life of that track or that investment. And so yes, the community will be able to use it. There will be walking lights, and so you can have access to it in the evenings. Of course, when the district is not utilizing it. Yep.
What's the track surface? Is it going to be crushed brick or?
Actually,
pressed
that'd
rubber.
be-
It'll be pressed rubber. Oh.
Yeah, it's rubber.
Dr. Edison, question on trust. How can we trust that this rate will adjust as the valuations continue to rise?
Very good question. I hope that you understand over the past 10 years, you've established a lot of trust, you put a lot of trust into this district. We hope you've established it by looking at that chart to say over the past 10 years, we were able to bring it back down. This board and myself are able to sit here and tell you, we will promise to do the exact same thing again when given that opportunity. And what drives that is there are just different things But whenever we're giving that opportunity to lower it, this board has been very, very good. I'm going to throw Frank Urbanowski out because he's not here and we don't have a quorum. But Frank doesn't say much. He does not say much. But when he does say something, you better listen because it's good. And it's real and it's going to help the community. And any opportunity that he sees, and he's a financial guy, that guy will pull out a calculator like this and you're worried. But if he sees an opportunity for us to lower taxes in any way, we're going to take advantage of it. And so I hope you understand.
Someone is doing some calculations here on this question. Over the past 10 years, they've calculated we have an average of 7.4 new students per year. And looking at that trend, will this accommodate us into the future as far as the classroom sizes, classroom building?
Very, very good question. I think that given the space that we're asking for currently, it will. The other thing that this does too, and I want you guys to understand, when we move art and we move band out of these places, it opens up another classroom area. And so we're also gaining classroom space. We're moving theater, we're putting in PE there, although that was in the gym. But band and art, we're gaining those spaces. So we do believe that this will be enough classroom space to get us to the next level as far as.
I was thinking at the last meeting I went to, you said it was going to be 16,000 square feet more classroom.
Perfect, yes. So 16,000 square feet of instructional space will be added with this bond. And to give you an idea of that, and I appreciate you bringing this up, our current classroom building, the L shape, is 21,000 square feet. So this will add 16,000 square feet to that feature. And so while a lot of that is the auditorium, one thing that we had talked about too, if we ever needed to go in there and break that up because we needed more space, we would have the space and the ability to do that. Remember, I don't know if we touched on this briefly, but auditorium has flex seating on the floor. What that means is flex seating is all these seats can be picked up and it can be a flat room so that we can either have banquets, we can have different things associated with that. So thanks for bringing that.
And then I'm getting to my last sticky note, so if anybody does have anything else that they want us to get to, look for Mr. Coffee or Ms. Montez. But this question is about funding and saying what other types of funding has been sought for these improvements. I'm guessing maybe through investments or grant opportunities.
Right. So I talked briefly about PTEC, but I just want to talk briefly just about some more things that we're able to do. So our board has also added an incentive for our staff that if any staff member were to write a grant, the staff member would actually receive incentive because that's free money to the district that we're getting so that we won't have to spend money on different things. And I just want to give you an idea about how this works. While facilities, our second part of PTEC was $225,000. It was a grant that Mr. Christian and I had worked on together. And that grant will be allowed to, build onto or build different things as far as our PTEC program, as long as it enhances that. And right now we're doing automotive. We're about to take on welding. And so this will allow us some opportunities to do that. But just to stretch a little bit further on grants, and I see Ms. Nugent here, and I hate to put her on the spot. We search for any and all grants, y'all. Any and all grants. We got a grant for milk, for the love of God. Okay, milk for how much, Ms. Nugent?
$11,700.
$11,700. So any opportunity that we see for grants, we're going after. I talked about Mr. Waddell a while ago. $45,000 on one bus. We applied again, and we have potentially received another opportunity to receive another $45,000 on another grant. So any opportunity, we are out there looking and searching for these grants. And they're actually making themselves more available. Well, where they went dormant for so long, you couldn't find a grant. They're starting to come back, so we're searching for those as well.
Can you just clarify what PTEC is?
Oh, okay, yes. Where is PTEC? Pathways to Early College.
In Technology, Early College High School.
Pretty good, right? Okay. And again, we're really excited about that because, again, we started with freshmen. We're paying for their coursework. If they're in, if they decide to take one of these things, we're paying for their coursework, we're paying for their college books and so forth, so that they can get a certification or an associate's degree. And we're expanding that. That's what's exciting.
Okay, and then can you also explain, because I saw this also as a comment somewhere, is why that fund balance from the M&O side cannot be invested to help?
Okay. So each year, the superintendent's required to go to what's called an investment officer training, and it's on our audit, guys. So we have to check that box, and they ask for our certificate, and we have to go to it. And so in the past, let's just say 20 years ago, when interest rates were good and you could invest money and you could make a profit, school district superintendents were actually able to take money and, with the board's approval, and invest it. Now it has become to the fact that we are getting more of an interest rate increase by having our money into our savings account with our local banks than by going and investing them. Because part of investing, you can't invest in something that
Like
loses.
stocks,
Yeah, and so, so that's kind of why that money is there. Our bank, we negotiate, they have been very nice to us on our interest rate, and our money has basically.
You went by that really fast. You can't take that money and go to the stock market.
No.
You have rules that say you can't lose principal.
Correct.
So your investment vehicles are limited to very safe investment vehicles.
Very safe, and those investments are not offering the interest rates that they once were.
Along those lines, can I ask, what's the return going to be on the bonds that are going to be sold? And what's the smallest increments that an individual can buy that, and do you know that?
What's the interest? So it's going to vary from the term, right? So it's a serial maturity, and what that means is that if we pass, if the bond is passed, the first maturity is going to be in 2023. You have to make a payment to an investor or investors, and then that goes all the way out for the next 25 years. So each one of those years is a maturity and a different interest rate. So it's going to vary on a scale all the way out to the next 25 years. The denomination, you would have to be in touch with an underwriter, which we can put you in touch with. Usually it's $10,000 increments to be able to go ahead and purchase a section of bonds from Aquila ISD.
If you could do the math where you could say, if I buy a $10,000 bond package, that my earnings on that over some period of time are going to offset my increase in my tax rate. Right.
It can.
By local people investing into those bonds.
It could. It just depends on how fast you grow and what interest rate you decide to purchase your bonds at. There is an equation where it could be possible, correct? Yes, ma'am.
You're not really saying a range? Is that because you don't know it because it's going to be valued at market at the time, or
Correct.
do you have a ballpark?
We have estimations that we provide the school board because we're talking about having a bond sale in late June, early July, and with the way the market is right now, it's a little more difficult to determine than what years past has been. I'm sure y'all hear in the news, the Federal Reserve, who pretty much controls the interest rate environment in the United States, they're looking at potential rate hikes, and so we've taken that into account in these projections. No financial advisor can tell you what it's going to be, but we're trying to be as conservative as possible, and provide a little bit of leeway in what our estimates are. And I do have a scale, yes. Do I know, is that scale going to be exactly that? No, I can guarantee that, but it'll be somewhere in a range like that. And so I can kind of show, I have it on my computer, I can show you what it looks like, but we won't know until that bond sale date happens. That's when the interest rate is locked in for 4-year bonds.
On the multi-event center, this might be a question for Wade. We mentioned that there was 16,000 square foot of instructional space, but out of that, what part of that is the event center?
About 12,000.
About 12,000. And then a question also on that was, if we know part of that space is going to have a flat surface for flex seating, why would we not also incorporate a second gym into that space?
It's a very good question. And you want to, facilities want to kick in, or y'all?
What was the question?
Yeah.
It was actually discussed to use that as a multi-purpose and make that more like the second PE gym. But after we kind of went back and forth, and the discussions were that we wanted it to be able to be more of like the nice looking with the seats, right, auditorium, but that you could still use it for multi-purpose. So with that, we kind of lost some of that flooring in that. But if you wanted to have a banquet or you wanted to have some sort of activities in there, you could bring tables in. There's plenty of room to do that. And you could bring in your chairs and carry on any type of activity like that. But then you also still have that, I'm trying to think of the word. What was the word? The risers. Yeah, we have like the seating with the risers where it still has that theater feel. So like for your graduations or your one-act plays and things like that, it still has the more of the, and it also held a lot more people. If we could bring the seats up, we were able to add in more seating in there.
There's also some scheduling conflicts because if you have elementary students in theater and also PE at the same time, that doesn't really work. And then if you have band happening during, or 3 times a day actually is what we have, band going 3 times a day, a theater also 3 times a day, then where would you put PE in those schedules? It makes it very, it all gets really muddled, and then there's no one's getting any time.
But that was a great question because we did, that was a discussion, and we did discuss doing that at first, and then that's where we got.
It would help before and after school though, for high school and junior high.
Well, it could help offset. I mean, the thing is like the PE building we're still doing that, but I think like long term, like we have issues with our junior high and high school trying to practice on the same gym where they're not getting that full thing, the full practice that they need with the full court. So, I mean, it could just be exclusive for junior high, high school students, and you still have the PE room for,
Yeah, and even the youth league, we were having trouble with our youth that play basketball, the high school games and junior high and things like that. So we were having to bring our little ones in to practice way later, really we were coming home and going straight to bed because it was pretty much our bedtime after basketball practice. But it was the only really time that we could fit everybody in so that everyone.
I just think to utilize that space, it would be good to have something, for that.
Could you repeat that square footage? I missed it.
12,000?
That's what the new building will be, is 12,000? 12,000 of that 16,000 foot that you said is education.
Right, and that 12,000 also includes the band hall and the art room,
So
the auditorium, yes.
Yeah. We have storage, 2 classrooms, and the event center will all be that 12,000 square feet.
And
And restrooms.
then can I ask another question? I did write it down, I apologize. Well ago, Dr. Harrison, you mentioned that y'all were able to bring down, what was it, 2011 bond? Was $1.30 something, you brought it back down 12 cents, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And, but I thought I heard you say it's because y'all voted it down. So is there a possibility that this is going to be in there for 25 years, is this tax rate on this bond at 12 cents?
Right, so we didn't vote it down, the board voted, we had the opportunity to reduce that tax rate, and the board voted, yes, we needed to do that. And that same goes with this commitment. You're committing the 12 cents to us, or what have you, But given the opportunity, yes, we would bring it down if we were ever in a position to do that. And again, hopefully, that's what the model had showed you, is that we will take advantage of that.
But otherwise, it will stay at that tax rate increase, and even if the bond's paid off, does it drop then? Or does it stay at that same tax rate because it's already been passed?
It would stay at that tax rate until the district is able to lower it. Correct. Yep.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. All right, Karen.
I know that's my number one question, and I'm the one that answered it, because that's my biggest thing, is the value of our properties are going higher and higher. Not the tax rate, y'all have done good with that.
Appreciate that.
Do you think part of that 100,000 you have in the bank is because you have received so much extra on our tax values?
Correct. So because your values have gone up, it has driven more money for us, and that way in return we are recouping more money. So we're like, that gave us an opportunity to lower that INS rate. That money that we got from the taxpayers in INS, it can only be used for bond payments, so we can't do anything else to that. So good point is, one year we went to the board and we said we had this money over here in INS. We can pull, I forget how much we pulled from INS to make, to put into the bond payment, so we would not have to charge the taxpayer as much that year. When we use that 233 to pay off this current bond, it will significantly reduce that money, but any money that we get in excess will stay in that INS, and we would be able to do the same thing again to help lower down the years. So,
One point that you haven't made that is make to the board every year. M&O tax rate, if we don't follow what the state says, the district is penalized. So the state pretty much sets the M&O rate.
very good.
I have the next hottest question.
Sure.
Are
transfers.
Are you still accepting new transfers? If so, why? And how do you determine why you would accept them?
Great. And I don't know if Ms. Page wants to take this because transfers are her baby. I will say this. We have been, in my opinion, a good guard of the gate. The way that we allow transfers in is a couple of things. First of all, we check that classroom to see if there's availability. We've also quit accepting transfers throughout the year. Let me say that. We only accept transfers once a year, and it's at the start of the school year. So we're no longer accepting them through the year. But we must have space for them while they are in our presence for the duration. And we say the term, if you're going to be at our party, you're going to have to do three things. You're going to have to maintain your grades, your discipline, and your attendance. And if you maintain those three things, while here, you can stay here. But we have guarded that gate, in my opinion, very, very well. Ms. P, do you want to
I do.
talk?
I was going to ask you if I could touch on that a little bit. First of all, we said they're my baby. That does not mean that I'm pro-transfers. He means that this is only my third year in admin. This is my third year as principal. So I can't speak for before that. But I know when I came in, it was a hot topic, right? I mean, some of us have met. So at that time when I knew it was hot, I just started watching it because I needed to know. So think when I was in the classroom, if that kid was in my room, I didn't know if they were transferred or in district, and I shouldn't know because that kid's a human, right? But once you get into admin, you need to look at it a little bit differently. So once it became a little hot, we started watching it. To answer your question, and I hope that this reassures you, and I've had this conversation with a lot of people one-on-one, and I think once we've had that conversation, they have left reassured. Is this. First of all, we've accepted one new transfer this year, one. And I can tell you the only reason why we took that child was because it was in a classroom that was split, and I could have taken many more, we could have taken more,
but it was split and it would balance out those classrooms. And we did not take that child's siblings either, okay? So it's very difficult decisions. We also took that child on an annual basis. So that whole conversation, so one. If I look at last year, there was one new one too. The other ones that were in there were siblings of current transfers. So then I started even looking at this more recently whenever we went into bond, because I needed to know, like Christian and I have spoken before, we keep hearing this word, oh, there's growth, there's growth, there's growth, right? We all drive down, we see houses, we see things. And I was like, well, I need to know where I need to see a number. I'm just that way. And the only way I could get to it was looking at enrollment. So I looked at the past 5 years, and I took the end of year enrollment, and then I took the number of kids on that enrollment that were out of district. And then I took that transfer number and I pulled my staffers out, which those are a child like myself. I'm from Golson, right? So my child is a Golson transfer because I work here. I took the staffers out of that transfer number. And then I took our early childhood special education kids out of that number. We just started that program 4 years ago, okay? So think, if you've got a number, let's say if it's 84 transfers, for this year it's 84, I actually just updated it. You guys have seen publicly recently that was published, it's 88. Well, it's been updated again because we check, it changes all the time. Some have left, okay? So it's 84 right now. I pulled 35 staffers and ECSC, early childhood kids out. So now you're left with 49 transfers. So then I went and looked at last year. Well, what'd that look like? That 49, and I don't, actually, I didn't think I have it with me, but that 49 was higher last year, a little bit. So then I looked at, 3 years ago, that number was a little bit higher. So what I'm saying is for the past 5 years, that transfer number, once you remove staffers and our early childhood special education program, which is average about 10 to 12 kids a year right now, for the last 5 years, it has dropped considerably to where right now we're sitting at 49. So and that is with the addition of a whole new program that we're accepting kids. That is with the addition of staff that have young children. We didn't have as many before when I looked back. A lot of the staffers are coming in with kids right now. Strong staff. I think we all agree to that. So that is with us adding 15, 18 kids a year from staffers and ECSC, and that number is still considerably dropping. That helped me. And I have those numbers if you ever want to see them. I love to look at it, I love to talk about it, because it proves it to me. We can talk growth, we can say we don't take them, but when I see it on paper, I can talk to you about it intelligently.
And I don't mean to sound inhumane.
You don't.
But when it first came up years and years ago, we were busting at the seams. And I went to Mr. Edison and asked for a list of the number of transfers versus students. We had one classroom with 30-something kids with 13 transfers in that room. That's where it hits me.
Yeah.
Yes, they're children, and it's great that they want to come here. And gosh, if we had plenty of room, that would be fabulous.
Right.
But sadly, when you see the district kids, being crammed because of that, then it's a tough decision. And
They are aging out. So
I
think
do
about that,
appreciate
the number,
that.
absolutely, but those numbers do show that now there's more, I guess, I don't know if focus is the right word on it, but they are aging out, right? Because even with the addition of this new program, early childhood and staffers, the number considerably drops every year. So they are aging out, and we're not putting them back in the bucket.
Thank you.
We also have, and I want to stress this too, in August, y'all are in our transfer applications, because you can get them, by requesting one. We have a huge amount of transfer applications that come in every summer. People that want to be here.
I get phone calls every single day. And I see the transfer.
One thing that came up in the facilities committee meeting I thought was really interesting, being an outsider. Apparently, I'm told if y'all charge even $1 for a transfer, then you're kind of married to them. You have to keep them. But by letting them come with no transfer fee for free, you set the 3 rules that he was talking about. So if they're a discipline problem, if they're an attendance problem, then you can end their tenure here and they can leave. So,
Which is part of what has helped to drop that number as well, because I like to look at it by kid. I would not ever show y'all that by kid, but I'll show you the number, but when I look at it by kid, you see coffee nose, you see one, oh, no longer here.
I'm the guardian at the
No
gate.
longer here,
Folks.
right. That also.
Tell them it's time to go.
Mr. Coffee, how many transfers did you
And he will be the first to tell you.
Yeah,
How
I
many
am
transfers
the
did you
guardian.
accept this year?
0.
0.
I am the guardian of the gate. I am the chair of the transfer committee. Ms. Page kind of keeps her eye on the number. I mean, we go through the whole process that Dr. Edison talked about. We have a probationary period for some of them. You mess up while you're on probation, ladies and gentlemen, I am sorry, but party's over. Time to go home. And I've had several of those conversations. I have helped that number go down.
And we're able to do that through our District of Innovation Plan that is approved by the state that allows us to have those type of standards to meet the But
I was just gonna say, we get paid ADA for those.
Sure.
So we do
Yep,
get money.
we do get money.
And a lot of
That's
people
right.
don't realize that
ADA.
we are getting money
correct.
for those.
I don't want to leave any question out, but I do want to get you out of here at a normal time. Is there anybody pressing? There's one other thing I want to say before we leave today.
Just kind of a quick piggyback on this discussion we're having here. So the other districts that are sending early childhood children to us, are we getting any money from that? And if so, where does that go?
Yes, we do. I mean, we get funding just like we would for any student that's here.
ADA.
Yeah, and so that's part of our budget as far as having those kids. So
And they do age out.
they do.
I think one of you just said that to me. That's important. That's why it's called early childhood special education. They were the hub for that from 3 to 6 years old. And then at 6 years old, they have to age out and go back to their home campus.
And I just-
Many times they go back talking. They go back
Assuming
not
that's not a
talking.
red number on the budget item. Right, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, a lot of people ask me about.
Okay, yeah, so that, and we'll end with this question too, if that's okay with everybody. So the bond, if it does pass, they want us to know what was the process for getting things built, and Wade might give a shorter answer.
Very briefly, phasing is very important. The first thing we would do probably is recommend a construction manager at risk. If we could do all these projects all at once, we'd hire a contractor and turn them loose. Because we can't build this until this goes away, but this can't go away until this is finished, so you can play football, new track, and other things. There's some shells to move. So again, I'm not the guy who's going to build it. We'll design it, get a construction manager on board. Right now, with the information I have, I think that we come in and start on this and this as fast as possible, because then once those are open, we can move this stuff that's here over here and redo this. We can move this stuff out to here, redo it. We can move this over here and do this. So probably it would be your new construction first, then your renovations. We can't rightly renovate a space that's still occupied before they have somewhere to go. So generally that's what it would do. And then I would do the parking lot last, because otherwise the contractor's just gonna tear it up. They gotta have somewhere to put all that stuff while they're under construction, and it's probably gonna be a fence here, or over here, or somewhere across with the dummy driving all over here. So we always tell them to do the parking lot last.
How long do we think it will take before all this is done? What are we
Big-
looking at?
big
A
picture
year,
stuff.
2, 3, 4 years?
Big picture stuff, perfect world. The bond passes in May. We start designing in earnest. Try hard to get it out for bids in 2022. Normally you'll find better bids in December of 22 than we would in January of 23, because everything goes up at the end of the year. So that would be the goal. Then when that happens, you start construction January, February of 23. The goal would be to be 100% occupied, complete, finished with everything new and renovated by the following school year, which would be August of 24. That's how long this stuff takes. So if you told me we don't need a new classroom for 3 years, we got to go. That's how long it takes.
Sorry, I got a question. You mentioned the turf. How long is that turf good for? Because Because you said 10 years is your story.
Well, most of them will give you a 10-year prorate. And they tell you that because most of the time, your bigger schools are the ones that are putting in your turfs, and they have soccer games going on, they have marching bands going on, marching bands practicing on them. A school our size, it wouldn't have near as much traffic as what.
I got you.
Yeah, it's just like, it literally is carpet, and it's based on use. If you do marching band, if you do football, if you do JV freshman and varsity football, all those things add up.
So on a busy school like
10
Conley and
years
West,
is
you're
what,
looking at 10 years.
is what everybody banks on. Everybody plans for 10 years. So that's the general rule of thumb.
And we know that you do have, you might have other questions. Again, we encourage you to visit the website. There's a link on the website that you can ask a question. That question will also go to our frequently asked questions, which we've already put some up there. The website is impressive. I want to thank Mr. Christian for his help with that and getting all that up to date today and getting all of it out to you. We encourage you to share that with your individual friends and so forth. Remember, we encourage you to vote. The last thing that I will say is this. In 2005, I pulled up to Aquila and I interviewed for a job. A lot of you might not know this. Y'all said no. Okay. Okay, y'all said no. Good try, little guy. No. Okay, big guy. 2006, I pulled back up, same parking lot, and Mr. Gwaltney gave me a little chance as a 27-year-old. And he said, come on in here and do your thing. I fell in love with community at that point. I fell in love with the place. And I fell in love with the Aquila that I know. Right now, a lot of you are passionate about this bond. And that's okay. And it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to get the correct answers. And you're passionate about it. The Aquila I know, for instance, this morning, we had a grandfather. He has 4 kids that he's taking care of. And he has a stroke. This morning I received a text. And while I'm receiving that text and getting ready for school, I received another text from our elementary principal that has 3 of those kids in her car bringing those kids to school. That's the Aquila that I know. Taking care of those kids, getting them back into a routine so they don't have to see all of these things that are transpiring at home. By the way, we were able to talk to Mr. Russell tonight, and he's doing well. Thank you, Jesus. The other Aquila I know is this. We had planned for an event to take place for the Education Foundation. Unfortunately, it did not take place, so we went out for a membership drive just for the Education Foundation. Y'all, in the course of 4 weeks, the Education Foundation for Aquila ISD has raised over $15,000. Special thanks to average, normal citizens and community members and businesses within this area that support the things that are going on. Trent, thank you again for your support. $15,000, y'all, just for this Education Foundation. That's going to go back into the hands of our teachers at the end of the year so they can enrich their children in their classrooms, so they can take them on field trips, so they can pay for different things. That's the Aquila that I've grown to love over the last 10 years that I've been here. I'm very proud of it. One more thing and I'll close with this. The other Aquila that I know, we take care of our individuals back there at that building in those 4 walls. Had a custodian diagnosed with cancer and she had to have a surgery and our staff donated enough days for that person not to miss a paycheck. That's the Aquila that I know. And while I know that you're passionate, while I know that you times are hard, I get it. Talk to us, ask us questions, because we want to make sure that you have the right information. But ultimately, we live in the great state of Texas and we live in the United States. You have an opportunity to vote. That's what we're encouraging you to do. Get out and cast your vote. Okay, some of you might not be for the bond. That's okay. Okay, get out there, exercise that right to vote. We thank you for the opportunity to be here for an hour and 50 minutes to share our story with you. If you have any questions, we're here for as long as you need us to be. Thank you for what you do for this community. That's it.